Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So what I'm going to do today, I will talk about personas. In the last episode, I wrapped up the process mapping, and I hope that you've enjoyed that session and perhaps you might have even had a chance to play around with different tools. If not, I would highly encourage you to do so if that's something you are after or that's something you think you might get involved in your future projects, right? Because at the end of the day, I believe certification is an opportunity for you to get your hands dirty and then, get on with the stuff, right? Try different stuff. That's the whole point, right, of getting certified. All right. So personas. What is persona, right? You might have heard about this term. You might have heard different people talking about these terms. Personas plays a very important role, right? Um, think about it. I just wanted to explain it from the experience I had because I'm involved with lots of personas. Even lately in one of my projects, we was talking about personas for one of the stuff we're gonna go live. So personas you can categorize or I can imagine like a group of users, right? So for instance, in your company, right, you have a group of users. So for instance, there's a separate department, right? So for instance, HR that comprises of people who looks after the recruitment, onboarding experience, and uh, you know, sending out offer letters, sending out the certificates, kind of stuff, right? And even giving out the promotion letters, right? So HR is a department, and the people there could be more than one person associated with the HR, right? So that's a group of you can imagine that as one persona, like an HR people. I'm just giving you from a broader context. I will come to the Salesforce in a second, right? So just wanted to, set that tone and set the expectation first. And that being said, HR could be of one person as well, like in the companies I worked in New Zealand in the past, right? We got one HR. And some companies do not even have HR, right? I understand that in the United States it's a pretty different game, or maybe in Europe, right? Big continent, big place. New Zealand is a tiny place. Most of our companies, unless you're talking about the big American companies, right? The small New Zealand shops are pretty tiny, so most of the companies do not employ HR. But just for the sake of argument, assume that you got an HR department contains three people, right? So that's one persona. Then you have a development team. That's one persona, right? Just assume for a second, right? You got a developers, like 8, 9 developers working in a development team, which is pretty common for most of the development in-house companies, right? And then you have a testing team that's a different personas, right? So it's like a group of users clustered into a categories, in simple terms, right? So it's like you're classifying them into a separate categories, or you can also imagine like an archetype, which I discussed, like archetype superstars, right? Per people who perform extremely well. So that could involve like 5, 6 people from different departments, right? From testing, from development, from HR, from finance, from payroll, from tax, right? So superstars from all this department get chosen every year to get recognized, right? So you can call it as a superstar persona. And also, why personas are important, if you wonder, right? Because when you are configuring Salesforce, right? When you are building a Salesforce functionality, when you're configuring Salesforce, obviously Salesforce will be used by different people in a different way, right? Think about it, what I just said. Salesforce will be used by different people in a different way, right? Let's take an example of the Sales Cloud, right? Now, Sales Cloud, if you are a user, right? Let's say if you are a sales agent, or you are a sales rep, right? So you'll be using Sales Cloud a little bit different, right? Your main area of interest is to create an opportunity, converting a leads, right? And obviously, having access to only, your leads or to leads belonging to maybe your other reps, right? So, so let's simplify it. Like I said, take an example of Salesforce rep, right? Salesforce rep could be in your company. You might have 4 reps. That comes under salespeople. Let's call the persona as salespeople. So the responsibility will be pretty simple, right? Create an opportunity, convert the lead to an opportunity, right? Or convert the lead to an account and contact, and and sign off the deal, right? Pretty simple, right? And that sales group, right, might contain five, six salespeople, right, and they pretty much perform the similar functionality. So that can be called as a one persona. Then we have the sales manager, whose responsibility is to look at the dashboard, who might be interested to see access the dashboard, KPI, performance of the sales rep. And then he or she or they may not be interested in closing the deal or maybe approving the final close of, right? So that's a different functionality they perform. And they might be interested into configuring a few aspects of the Sales Cloud, right, to give access to sales rep to different fields or certain fields they do not want to give access to, like they might want to have an admin access. So think about it, right? What I just said, the sales leader or sales manager performs different functionality, right? So we are talking about the Sales Cloud, and the Sales Cloud is getting used in a different ways, right? By a sales rep, they're using opportunity, converting a lead, that's a functionality, right? Lead to an account, contact, an opportunity. Let's for now think about a simple case, right? You don't necessarily have to convert to opportunity, but just for the time being, assume that a lead is getting converted into account, case, and opportunity. So the sales rep will perform that role, right? Now, the sales manager role is different. They wanted to look at, although they can do the similar operation what a sales rep is doing, but they normally don't do that, right? They're often involved in approval process, um, and they're involved in reviewing your dashboard to see the KPI, the performance, or which leads are open, which leads are pending. So their role is different. So the sales manager persona is entirely different. Then you have people who pretty much look at the financial aspect of it. Some say, for instance, if you're using CPQ, right, the maintaining a price book, that could be done by a finance team, right? So you can categorize as the finance people, right? Finance persona. Then you can also think about, let's say, if you shy away from a sales cloud for a second, let's talk about the service cloud, right? At the same time, you have a service rep, right? Service rep who wants to create a case, right? Who wants to access to the knowledge base, who wanted to um, close the case, right? Who wanted to log a case, who wanted to, log a conversation what they had with the customer. So all this information can be considered as a sales rep process, and you can also call it as a sales rep persona. Sorry, my apologies. It's not sales rep; it's support rep persona, right? The same way, the support manager will have a different role. Like I said, KPI access, configuring the omni-channel, giving access to the knowledge base, and all kind of stuff, right? So it's a different persona. So that's why personas are very important because it tells it helps an architect or it helps a stakeholder to understand what each persona is responsible for, right, and what access they need, right? Obviously, the sales rep should not have access to, may not be, they should not have admin access, right? So, and should not have access to the record, what a manager can see, right? They should not have access to the performance information about other rep. So a lot of things you can control. You can also control through the roles because obviously roles comes into picture when you wanted to see the record level access, right? Which records you wanted to see, which records you want to share, right? And so yeah, and so that's in a nutshell, what personas is all about, right? Personas, though I'm going to explain in a very simple way, and I hope that's clear for you guys. In most of the companies, if you work, right, so if the project hasn't gone live, so if you're a business analyst, they will ask you to say, hey, go and chase up with the customer to get the persona so that we can configure it. Now, persona helps you to configure sharing rules. It helps you to create a security model. There are a lot of things you can do with the persona, right? So that's why it's very important to have a persona in place. Also, who can log in, right? So, like for instance, I remember that in one of the government agencies I worked, I built a JIT handler based, you know, identity system. So what that will do is that, right? So we got a system with, we have an AD which is configured with Azure, right? Azure Active Directory. So and Azure has a domain AD group. So that based on that AD group, the user should have access to different permission set, or to the permissions and license, and to profile, right? So so what I've done, right, I built those using Jet Handler. So whenever a user logs in, right, you can, it will automatically see if the permission set is assigned. It will not bother with it. If it sees that, okay, this particular AD group do not need access to this permission set based on whatever the governance process we had, based on whatever decision they made at an architecture level or the stakeholder, identity level, then what the software will do is that the JIT handler will say, okay, this one do not needs to have access. It will remove the access. So that was a very flexible system I built. So having a persona played an important role. Without persona, I wouldn't have built it, because and persona is in that case driven by the AD group, right? Because they say that this much group, this kind of people will have this AD group. So that's, sorry, I'm digressing, but I'm just saying a real life experience to you where I implemented it, although it's more associated with the identity management, but still, it kind of touches the persona aspect, right? So that's the reason why I'm saying the persona plays a very important role. And this is one of the most important topic from your exam point of view, as well as from a general knowledge perspective, right? I mean, think about it, right? You're a Salesforce business analyst, you're a Salesforce consultant. If you don't understand persona, it's not really good. It's not really going to look good on you, because the client will ask, "Hey, you're a consultant, right? You don't understand persona? Are you serious?" And I've seen people, right? I mean, I don't really want to get into it, because I decided I'm not going to rant anymore, because there's no point, because I come to a conclusion that people who don't want to do anything, they will not do anything, right? And eventually they're going to get fired. So, it's just like what goes in, what comes back, right? So that's how it is. I accepted that. I'm not going to correct anyone, like I said, right? Because why should you care, right? If people themselves don't care, let them face the consequence, right? End of story. So, so that's what I'm saying, right? It's, if you wanted to be a business analyst, understand what personas are, right? And I will encourage you to go to Trailhead and read about it, right? I'm not going to cover stuff with the slides, because most of the stuff I can talk through it. But if you think want me to do slides, just give me a shout. Yeah, we can do something around that, right? So that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing Wednesday. Adios.